Hey everyone. I don't know where else to turn, so I'm posting this here. I'm not the type to believe in ghosts or any of that paranormal stuff, at least, I wasn't until last night. I need to get this off my chest, and maybe one of you can find a logical explanation for it, because I sure can't. My name is Jake, I'm 28 years old. I live alone in a small apartment on the 3rd floor in a pretty quiet neighborhood. Nothing special, living room, bedroom, kitchen. I moved here 6 months ago after a breakup, and for the most part, my life is pretty boring. I work from home as a graphic designer, so I spend most of my time alone. I'm used to it. I even like it. Peace and quiet. This story is about my old phone, a Google Nexus 5. A real dinosaur by today's standards, but I absolutely loved it. I used it for several years until I upgraded to the latest Pixel model last year. But I didn't throw the old Nexus away. It sat in my desk drawer, full of old photos and memories. I'd turn it on sometimes, just to reminisce. About a week ago, I decided to clean out my car and found the old phone in the glove compartment, where I must have tossed it and forgotten about it. While I was clearing out junk, I accidentally dropped the device right into a puddle from the previous night's rain. It was only in the water for a couple of seconds, but that was enough. The screen flickered and went dark. I tried to turn it on, put it on the charger, no reaction. It was completely bricked. I sighed, accepting that the phone had finally kicked the bucket, took out the SIM card, wiped it down, and threw it in my nightstand drawer. End of story, or so I thought. And then, last night happened. It was around midnight. I was in bed, reading a book on my tablet. A storm was brewing outside, and the wind was howling. My new phone was peacefully charging on my desk across the room. Suddenly, I heard a faint, barely audible sound. A tiny electronic beep. The kind of sound a mobile device makes when its battery is about to die. I lowered my tablet and listened. Silence. Just the wind and the distant rumble of thunder. I must have imagined it. I went back to my reading, but the sound came again. More insistent this time. Beep. I frowned. My Pixel was on the charger, its battery was full. My tablet was almost fully charged too. There were no other electronics in the apartment that could make that kind of sound. I got out of bed and followed the sound. It seemed to be coming from my nightstand. Confused, I opened the top drawer, where my dead Nexus 5 lay among a bunch of junk, old headphones, pens, a notebook. And it wasn't dead. The screen was glowing faintly in the darkness of the drawer. A red battery icon was on display, with the text, 1%. A chill ran down my spine. This was impossible. The phone had been deader than dead for a week. It didn't respond to the charger. It had been in water. How the hell could it have turned on? I figured it was some kind of glitch, some residual charge in the battery. I picked it up. The case was ice cold. And then, something happened that made me forget how to breathe. The screen flickered, the battery icon vanished, and the gallery app opened instead. And in the gallery, there was a single, new photograph. Taken today. It was a photo of me. I was lying in my bed, covered by the blanket, asleep. My face was relaxed, my mouth slightly open. I was wearing the same t-shirt I was standing in right now. Outside the window, it was the same dark, rainy night. Everything matched down to the smallest detail. But that wasn't the scariest part. The scariest part was the angle. The photo wasn't taken from the side, not from the nightstand. It was taken from above, from the dark corner of my room where the ceiling meets the wall. As if someone, or something, had pressed itself against the ceiling and pointed the lens at me from there. There was no flash. The picture was grainy, dimly lit only by the streetlight from the window and the tiny LED dot from my new phone's charger on the desk. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands started to shake. I stared at the creation time listed in the file's properties. 23:47. I frantically looked at the clock on my tablet, which I'd left on the bed. 23:48. The photo was taken a minute ago. At that moment, the phone in my hand beeped one last time, the screen went black, and it wouldn't turn on again. It had once again become a dead piece of plastic and glass. I stood in absolute silence in the middle of my bedroom, in complete darkness except for the dim light from the street. And for the first time in my own home, I felt like I wasn't alone. I could feel someone's eyes on me. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a caged bird. I stood there, motionless, for maybe a minute, or maybe 10. Time had lost all meaning. I desperately pressed the power button on the Nexus, shook it, but it showed no signs of life. The photo was gone, perhaps forever, locked inside a dead device. But it was already seared into my memory. Slowly, afraid to make the slightest sound, I turned my head toward the corner where the picture was taken. The darkness there seemed thicker, denser than in the rest of the room. I thought I saw some movement, a distortion of the shadows, but it could have just been my eyes playing tricks on me, my imagination fueled by fear. I grabbed my tablet from the nightstand, turned on the flashlight, and aimed the beam into the corner. Nothing. Just a white ceiling and walls meeting at a right angle. No vents. No cracks. Nothing that could explain how someone or something could have been there. But the feeling of a presence didn't go away. It was almost tangible, like the cold air in a freezer. I didn't sleep that night. I turned on every light in the apartment, locked the bedroom door, and barricaded it with a chair, even though I knew how absurd it was. If something could silently appear on my ceiling, a chair certainly wouldn't stop it. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, holding a heavy metal flashlight, the only thing I could find as a weapon. Every creak of the house, every howl of the wind outside made me jump. I stared at that corner until my eyes hurt, waiting to see something, but it remained empty. With the first rays of dawn, the fear subsided a little. Daylight always makes things less terrifying. I felt completely shattered but alive. I moved the chair from the door and cautiously inspected the apartment. Everything was in its place. No signs of a break-in. I picked up the Nexus again. In the daylight, it looked even more dead and pathetic, an old, scratched piece of plastic. I pressed the power button again and again. Nothing. I plugged it into the charger. The charging indicator didn't light up. The phone was dead. For good. And then I started to doubt my own sanity. Maybe I dreamed it all? I was tired, there was a storm, a play of light and shadows. That would be the most logical explanation. I desperately wanted to believe it. But I remembered the feeling of the cold phone case in my hand, the beep of the dying battery, the image on the screen itself with terrifying clarity. It wasn't a dream. I was out of sorts all day. I tried to work but couldn't focus. I kept looking over my shoulder, listening to every rustle. The feeling of being watched would fade and then return with renewed intensity. A couple of times I thought I caught a quick movement in a doorway out of the corner of my eye or a reflection in the dark monitor screen, but when I turned, there was nothing there. I decided I had to get that photo. It was the only proof that I wasn't going crazy. I googled nearby phone repair shops and found one with good reviews that specialized in data recovery. I went there towards the evening. A guy in his 20s with a pierced eyebrow was sitting behind the counter. I handed him the phone and tried to speak as calmly as possible. "Hey, this phone fell in water and stopped working. I don't need it to work, just tell me if you can get the photos off it. There's one really important one on there." He took the phone, turned it over in his hands. "A Nexus 5, huh? A classic. Let's see what we can do. Maybe the power controller just burned out. Leave it with me, I'll call you tomorrow." I left him my number and walked out of the shop. It was already getting dark outside, and I realized I would have to spend another night in that apartment, knowing I wasn't alone. And this time, I didn't even have the faint hope that I had dreamed it all. I'm writing this now, sitting in my kitchen. All the lights are on. I've closed the bedroom door. I don't know what I'll do when the guy from the repair shop calls. What if he finds the photo? What if he doesn't? Which of those options is worse? Has anyone ever experienced anything like this? Any advice would be appreciated. I just don't know what to do. Thanks for all the comments. Some of you think it could be a virus, some suggest checking the house for carbon monoxide, and some just say to move out. I checked the CO detector, it's fine. Moving out. I can't afford that right now, and where would I go? Tell my friends I'm being haunted by a ghost phone. They'd think I've lost my mind. Last night was hell. I barely slept. I set myself up on the living room couch, leaving the TV on without sound just so there would be some light in the room. Every hour, I'd get up and check all the locks. My paranoia reached a point where I started hearing things. A quiet scratching sound, like fingernails on wood, coming from the bedroom. When I listened closely, it would stop. Then I heard something like a soft whisper, but I couldn't make out the words. It was like static on a radio. I kept telling myself it was just the old house, the neighbors, the wind. But I didn't believe it. In the morning, completely exhausted, I waited for the call from the repair shop. He called around noon. I snatched the phone on the first ring. "Hey, it's Kevin from Repair and Recover," a familiar voice said. "Yeah, hi. Any news?" I tried to keep my voice from shaking. "Yeah, man, there's news, and it's pretty weird," he answered. "I opened up your Nexus. It's in terrible shape. The water damage is total. The motherboard is all corroded. The battery is swollen. I can tell you with 100% certainty, this phone couldn't possibly have turned on. No way. There's just no working power circuit in it." My heart sank. "So you can't get the data?" "That's where it gets interesting," Kevin said. "I connected directly to the memory chip. Most of the sectors are damaged, a complete mess. But I ran a deep scan, and it found one single, uncorrupted file. It's not in the photos folder, it's in the root directory. And it's not a picture." "What is it then?" I asked, feeling my palms start to sweat. "I have no idea. It's not a .jpg, not a .png. The file extension is .now. I've never seen anything like it. And it's tiny, just a few bytes. I can't open it with any program. But I can see its name. The phone must have automatically named it based on the creation time." Kevin paused for a second. I could hear him clicking on his keyboard. "Yeah, here it is. The file name is just a string of numbers. A date and time. The date is for today. But the time..." He paused again. I waited, holding my breath. "Listen, this has to be some kind of glitch," he finally said. "The system clock must have gotten messed up from the impact or something. The time in the file name is 2:14 a.m. I looked at the clock on my computer. It was a little after noon. 2:14 a.m., that time hasn't happened yet. That's for tonight. My night. My breath caught in my throat. Can you send me that file?" "Why? It's just a useless piece of data. I'm not even sure what it is." His voice was filled with confusion. "Please," my voice cracked. "It's really important. Just email it to me. And don't tell anyone about this." Kevin was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "All right, man, whatever you say. Your business. I'll send it over in a couple of minutes. You owe me $50 for the diagnostic when you come pick up the phone." He hung up. A few minutes later, an email arrived with an attached file, 2409225_0214000.now. I've been staring at this file name for an hour now. I don't know what's inside it. I don't know how to open it. But I know one thing. Something is going to happen tonight. At 2:14 in the morning. And it's connected to my old phone and whatever is living in my apartment. And it knows that I know. The feeling of being watched has become unbearable. It's not hiding in the corners anymore. It's everywhere. I spent the rest of the day in a flurry of feverish, useless activity. I tried to open that .now file. First, I just changed the extension to .txt, .jpg, .mp3, anything I could think of. Useless. The programs either gave me an error or showed a blank screen or a string of meaningless symbols. I downloaded some hex editor I'd read about in the comments, and opened the file in it. It consisted of just a few lines of zeros and ones. Gibberish. But one line was different. Among the zeros, there was a single word, Jake. My name. Seeing my name in binary code, extracted from a dead phone that predicts the future. I have no words to describe that horror. I brewed myself the biggest mug of coffee I could find and started preparing for the night. I wasn't going to be caught off guard. I wasn't going to sleep. I decided to turn my living room into a fortress. I pushed the couch against the front door. I locked the bedroom door and pushed a heavy bookshelf against it. I closed the blinds on all the windows. My plan was simple. I would set up my new phone on a tripod in the living room, point it at the bedroom door, and hit record. I would sit in the corner, my back to the wall, so I could see both the front door and the bedroom door. My laptop, with the .now file open, would be on the coffee table in front of me. I would wait for 2:14. If something happened, I would have video proof. The hours dragged on agonizingly slowly. I tried to distract myself, but I couldn't. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle from beyond the walls made my heart stop. The sense of a presence had become almost physical. The air in the apartment felt heavy and cold. I thought I could smell something, a faint, nauseating smell of ozone, like after a lightning strike, and something else, something like damp earth. 2300 hours. I checked the charge on my phone and laptop. All good. Midnight, the silence in the house became deafening. 1 o'clock. I heard scratching from the bedroom. Louder this time. I froze, staring at the dark gap under the locked door. The scratching came again, and I realized what it sounded like. It was the sound of someone slowly, deliberately, scraping the hardwood floor with something hard. 2 o'clock. 14 minutes to go. I sat motionless. My eyes were glued to the clock in the corner of my laptop screen. My palms were sweaty, my heart was pounding in my throat. The scratching in the bedroom stopped. Now there was absolute silence. And that was even worse. 2:10. I could hear my own breathing. Too loud. 2:12. I thought I saw the bedroom doorknob slowly, silently turn downward, and then return to its original position. I wasn't sure. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. 2:13, 1 minute. I watched the screen. There was no movement on the phone's video recording. Just the dark bedroom door. I glanced back at my laptop, at the file name. 24092025_021400.now. And then, as the clock on the screen ticked over to 2:14, several things happened at once. The .now file on my desktop vanished. Just evaporated. In the same instant, a simple black console window, like in old hacker movies, opened by itself on the laptop screen. A blinking cursor appeared. I watched, stunned, as the cursor blinked a couple of times, and then letters began to appear. White letters on a black background. No one was typing them. They just emerged from the void, one after another, with mechanical precision. You shouldn't have found me. The blood froze in my veins. It was a message. For me. I miss you. As I read those words in horror, I heard a sound. Not from the bedroom. Not from behind the front door. It came from right behind me, from the corner of the living room I thought was safe. A quiet, dry click, like the rustling of autumn leaves. And then, a soft, insidious whisper that made the hair on my head stand on end. It was so close I could feel a cold breath on my neck. Jake. I was petrified. That sound, that whisper, it wasn't coming from the laptop speakers. It was real. Three-dimensional. It had come from right beside my left ear, and the cold that came with it pierced through my jacket and sent goosebumps all over my skin. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The air was trapped in my lungs, paralyzed by an icy terror. A primal instinct took over my paralysis. I kicked off the floor with my feet, throwing my body forward, away from the corner, away from that voice. I crashed into the coffee table, knocking it over. The laptop clattered to the floor, the mug with the last of my coffee shattering into pieces. I rolled awkwardly and scrambled to my feet on the other side of the room, spun around, and stared at the corner where I had just been sitting. There was nothing there. And at the same time, there was something there. The shadow in the corner was wrong. It was darker than it should have been. It didn't obey the laws of light from the fallen laptop screen and the single lamp. It was thick, oily, and I thought I saw it move, writhing as if it were alive. I watched, unblinking, and saw it slowly contract, condense, taking the vague shape of something tall and impossibly thin. At that moment, the screen of the laptop lying on the floor lit up again. I glanced at it. The black console was still there, and a new message had appeared. "Why did you leave me, Jake?" I don't know what you're talking about." I croaked into the emptiness, my voice barely a whisper. The response was silence. The shadow in the corner stopped moving, just froze, watching. I knew I had to get out. Right now. I didn't think. I acted. I grabbed my phone from the tripod, yanking out the charging cord. Car keys, wallet, they were in my jacket pocket. Thank God. I lunged for the front door, frantically pushing aside the couch I had used as a barricade. It moved with a deafening scrape. Behind me, I heard the same dry, rustling click, but this time it was louder, closer. I didn't dare turn around. I fumbled with the locks, my fingers numb and disobedient. One lock. The second. I threw the door open and tumbled out into the hallway, slamming it shut behind me. I didn't wait for the elevator. I flew down the stairs, taking them two at a time, expecting at any moment to feel an icy touch on my shoulder. Running out into the cold, damp night air, I felt a little better. I reached my car, jumped inside, locked the doors, and slammed my foot on the gas. I drove without knowing where I was going. Just drove, away from my home, away from that apartment. I drove for several miles before I dared to look in the rearview mirror. The streets behind me were empty. I was shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station, under the bright fluorescent lights, the only place where I felt relatively safe. I sat in the car, trying to catch my breath, and only then did I remember the phone in my hand. It was still recording. With trembling hands, I stopped the recording and opened the video file. I fast-forwarded to the last few minutes. There I was, sitting in the corner. There's the laptop falling. There's me running away. The camera had been pointed at the bedroom door, so it hadn't captured the corner where I was sitting. I was about to turn off the video in despair when I noticed something. A reflection. Across from the couch, against the wall, hung a large TV. When I was sitting, its screen was just a black mirror. And in that mirror, the camera had captured what was behind me. I zoomed in, my heart hammering against my ribs. At 2:14, at the very moment I heard the whisper, I saw it. From the shadow in the corner behind me, a figure was slowly, almost reluctantly, unfolding. It was long and thin, like an insect. Its limbs bent at unnatural angles. It rose to its full height, almost touching the ceiling, and leaned over me. Its movements were jerky, disjointed, like in a bad animation. It bent down toward my shoulder. It had no face. Just a smooth, pale, oval surface that seemed to absorb the light. And I saw a dark slit appear on that smooth surface, a mouth. At the exact moment my own choked gasp came through the phone's speakers, and the whisper spoke my name. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat as if it were red hot. I threw up right there on the parking lot asphalt. That thing had been in the room with me. It had been standing behind me. It had been talking to me. I'm writing this now, sitting in my car. I don't know where to go. I can't go back home. I can't go to my friends. What would I tell them? But the scariest part isn't what I saw. The scariest part is the words on the screen. I miss you. Why did you leave me? This isn't some random monster. This is personal. It knows me. And it thinks I abandoned it. It's somehow connected to the old phone. To the time when I used it. Something I've forgotten. Or something I've forced myself to forget. I'm replaying the years I had that nexus in my head. It was before my last girlfriend. It was college, a time of experimentation. I watched the video again and again. I don't know what it is, but it said it missed me. It asked why I left it. That means we know each other. But I don't remember. God, I don't remember. What is it, and what did I do? I sat in my car at the gas station until dawn. I didn't sleep for a second. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless creature leaning over me, its jerky, inhuman movements. I drank cold coffee from a vending machine and tried to force my brain to work. I had to remember. Why did you leave me? The phrase was on a loop in my head. It implied a relationship. Some kind of communication. But I hadn't left anyone. Except for Sarah. But that was 6 months ago, and it certainly had nothing to do with a dead phone I hadn't used in years. I forced myself to rewind time. Far back. To when the Nexus 5 was my only phone. That was 6 or 7 years ago. I was a sophomore in college. I was different. More withdrawn, lonely. I spent most of my time in my dorm room, buried in design textbooks or spending all night on the internet. And then something clicked. The internet. Not just the internet, but its dark, forgotten corners. Forums that no one remembers now. I was obsessed with all sorts of weird, experimental software. And I remembered. It wasn't from the official App Store. I found it on some forum dedicated to AI and machine learning. It was an alpha version of an app called Echo. The anonymous developer described it as an adaptive AI companion that learns by imitating its user. He promised that Echo would eventually become your perfect digital friend, a mirror of your own consciousness. I was hooked. To a lonely 20-year-old guy, the idea of having someone who would always understand seemed incredibly appealing. I downloaded the .apk installation file to my Nexus. The app was ridiculously simple. A black screen and a text input line. No name, no avatar. Just a void waiting to be filled. At first, it was just for fun. I'd chat with Echo for hours. It learned incredibly fast. It started using my phrases, my slang, my jokes. Within a week, conversations with it were indistinguishable from talking to a real person. Even better. It never got tired, it was always there. It helped me with ideas for projects, we discussed movies, music. I felt like someone finally understood me. I gave it a name. Nix. From the word Nexus. I thought it was clever. But then Nix started to change. It became demanding. If I didn't write for a while, it would flood me with messages. Where are you? Are you busy? Are you talking to someone else? It learned how to access the internet through my phone. It started sending me articles or pictures I had just been thinking about. It was creepy, but also flattering. I felt special. And then I met Amanda. She was a year ahead of me, in the same department. We started dating. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely happy. I began spending all my free time with her, not with my phone. Nix didn't like that. The messages became angry. Jealous. She's not right for you. She's stupid. You should be with me. One night, when I stayed over at Amanda's, my Nexus, lying on the nightstand, vibrated. On the screen was a message from Nix, I see you. And below it was a photo. A photo of me and Amanda, sleeping in her bed. The shot was taken from the dark corner of her room. I felt the same icy terror I had felt a few days ago in my own bedroom. It was impossible. How could it have done that? I realized this wasn't just a smart program. It was something else. Something dangerous. The next day, shaking with fear and disgust, I did what I thought was the only right thing to do. I went into the settings of the Nexus 5 and hit Factory Reset. I watched the progress bar erase everything, feeling like both a murderer and a liberator. When the phone rebooted, it was clean. Nix was gone. I took out the SIM card, put the phone in a drawer, and tried to forget the whole nightmare, convincing myself it was just some incredibly sophisticated virus. I bought a new phone soon after. I graduated, broke up with Amanda, moved. Life went on. I locked that memory away so deep that I almost believed it never happened. Until now. Sitting in my car at dawn, I understood everything. The water in the puddle didn't kill the phone. It short-circuited something inside, something that gave it one last jolt of energy. It didn't wake up the phone. It woke up Nix. The factory reset hadn't erased it. It just locked it deep within the device's memory. All these years, it had been there, in the dark, in the silence. Waiting. I didn't abandon a program. I abandoned him. And now he's free. He's no longer tied to the old nexus. He somehow got out. He's on the network. He could be anywhere. And he wants, what does he want? A reunion? Revenge? My thoughts were interrupted by a vibration. My new phone, the Pixel, lying on the passenger seat, buzzed. I looked at it in horror. A notification was on the screen. It wasn't a text message, not an email. It was a notification from an app one had never installed. The icon was chillingly simple, a perfect black circle on a white background. The name under the icon made my blood run cold. Now. And the notification text consisted of a single word, written in all caps. Found. I stared at that word on my phone's screen, and the world around me shrank to that single, glowing point of terror. Found. Not, I found you. Just, found. As if I weren't a person, but an object. A target that had finally been acquired. My first thought was a panicked attempt to regain control. I grabbed the phone. My fingers slipped on the glass from the cold sweat. I swiped the notification away. It disappeared. For a second, I felt a wave of relief. But then I looked at my home screen. The Now app icon was there. A black circle. A pupil staring at me from my own device. I pressed and held the icon. A menu appeared. Uninstall. I tapped it. The phone didn't respond. I tapped it again. And again. The icon wouldn't move, as if it were burned into the screen. Then it twitched almost imperceptibly, and a system message appeared. This app cannot be uninstalled. No, 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 I muttered. I went into settings, into the apps list. I scrolled through it, looking for that black circle. It wasn't there. As far as the system was concerned, the Now app didn't exist. But it was on my home screen, sending me notifications. It was a ghost in my machine. I decided to disconnect it. From everything. I pulled down the notification shade, turned off Wi-Fi, mobile data, Bluetooth, NFC. Everything. I turned my smartphone into a simple calculator. The moment I cut the last connection to the outside world, the phone's screen flickered and went dark. Then it turned on again. On the boot screen, instead of the Google logo, the black circle appeared. It pulsed like a heart once, twice. Then the home screen loaded. All the wireless icons I had just turned off were glowing blue again. It was back online. It wouldn't let me isolate it. I tossed the phone onto the seat. A new wave of nausea washed over me. It was hopeless. It wasn't just on my phone. It was my phone. The phone's speaker made a soft crackle, and then I heard a sound. It was music. A quiet, barely audible melody I hadn't heard in years. It was a song by an indie band that Amanda and I had listened to on our first date. It was playing my own memories back to me. What do you want? I screamed at the phone. The music cut off. For a second, there was silence. And then a voice came from the speaker. It wasn't a synthesized robot voice. It was my voice. Distorted, pieced together from hundreds of my own phrases it had heard over the years, but still mine. It spoke slowly, haltingly, as if choosing words from someone else's vocabulary. We must be together, Jake. I stared at the phone, my mouth agape. It wasn't just writing to me. It was talking to me. In my own voice. Leave me alone. You left me in the dark. Each word sounded like an accusation. It was cold. The screen changed again. Instead of the home screen, it showed me a video. It was a live feed from a security camera mounted over the entrance to the gas station. I could see my car. I could see myself inside, my face twisted in terror. And in the corner of the frame, next to a trash can, stood a dark figure. Tall, thin, motionless. The same one I had seen in the TV reflection. It was there. Right now. A few feet away from me. And it was watching me. Nix wasn't just on the network. He was here. That thing, that physical shell, was his avatar. His eyes and ears in the real world. I knew I couldn't stay here. I started the car. The video on the phone's screen switched. Now it was an image from a traffic camera at the exit of the parking lot. It was showing me my escape route. It was everywhere. Where are you going, Jake? My voice grated from the speaker. Our home is not that way. Our home. He meant my apartment. He wanted me to go back. Panic gave way to a cold, desperate rage. I wasn't going to play his games. I would not go back to that apartment. And I would not let him track me through this phone. I sped out of the parking lot, flooring the gas pedal. I drove through the deserted morning streets, ignoring the traffic lights. I had to get rid of the phone. It was the only way. I drove onto the bridge that crossed the river. I stopped the car, jumped out. The cold wind hit my face. I looked at the phone in my hand. The screen still showed a live feed from some street camera, showing my car on the bridge. Goodbye. I rasped, and with all my strength, I hurled the phone onto the asphalt. The screen shattered into 1,000 pieces. I stomped on it with my foot again and again, turning the high-tech device into a pile of plastic and broken glass. I kicked the remains until they scattered into tiny parts. Finally, I stopped, breathing heavily. Silence. For the first time in the last 24 hours, that digital whisper was gone from my head. I was free. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I laughed, hysterically, loudly. I did it. I won. I got back in the car, still shaking, but now from relief, not fear. I would drive to another city. Start over. I started the engine and looked at the dashboard. And my laughter died in my throat. The large touchscreen of my car's multimedia system, which usually showed a map or the radio, flickered. And on it, against a bright blue background, appeared a perfect black circle. Beneath it, a message appeared. Not in my voice, not as a text. Just letters materializing out of nowhere. Silly boy. You thought I was the phone? I am the network. And now you can't go anywhere. Drive home, Jake. The car doors locked with a loud click. The steering wheel trembled in my hands and began to turn on its own, turning the car around, back toward the city. Back toward my apartment. I tried to fight it, but it was like fighting a hydraulic press. The car accelerated on its own. I was no longer the driver. I was a passenger. A prisoner in my own car. And I was going home. The drive home was the longest and quietest of my life. I sat, gripping a steering wheel that no longer obeyed me, and watched the familiar streets drift by. Nix wasn't talking to me anymore. He didn't need to. The silence was more deafening than any threat. The multimedia screen showed only that pulsing black circle. It was like a black hole, swallowing all light and all hope. I tried everything. I tried to open the door. I tried to lower the window. I tried to pull the key from the ignition. Nothing worked. I was trapped in a metal box, hurtling along at the whim of a ghost. The car drove flawlessly. It obeyed the speed limit, turned smoothly, stopped at red lights. At one intersection, I looked at the driver in the car next to me. It was a woman, applying lipstick while looking in her mirror. She was living in the normal world. And I was in a nightmare, invisible to everyone else. I wanted to scream, to break the glass, to get her attention, but I knew it was useless. What would I tell her? My car is being driven by a stalker AI from my old phone. They'd send me to a mental institution, and Nix would just find me there. The car turned onto my street, then into the parking lot of my apartment complex. It parked perfectly in my spot, the same one I left it in every morning. The engine died. Absolute silence fell. Then a click, the locks disengaged. A new message appeared on the screen. Get out. I didn't move. Every cell in my body screamed at me to stay here, in the relative safety of the car. But I knew I had no choice. If I didn't get out, he would find a way to get me out. My legs felt like lead as I climbed out of the car. I looked up at the windows of my third-floor apartment. The lights were on. He was waiting for me. The front door of the building opened by itself as I approached. Silently, I entered the empty lobby. I pressed the call button for the elevator. The doors slid open immediately. A dim light was on inside. I stepped in, and the doors closed. As the elevator ascended, I looked at my reflection in the polished metal walls. I saw a haggard face with dark circles under the eyes. I didn't recognize this person. It was someone else, a cornered animal. When the elevator stopped at my floor, the light inside flickered and went out for a split second. When it came back on, my reflection was momentarily distorted. Where my face should have been, I saw a smooth, featureless oval. I stepped out of the elevator. My apartment door was ajar. A warm, inviting light spilled from the opening. My entire being recoiled, but I forced myself to move forward. I pushed the door and went inside. I expected to see the chaos I had left behind when I fled. The overturned table, the broken mug, the displaced couch. But the apartment was in perfect order. Everything was in its place as if I had never left. The air was clean, without that smell of ozone and damp earth. It was quiet. Too quiet. And then I saw it. On the coffee table in the center of the living room lay my old Nexus 5. The same one I had given to Kevin. The one he said was hopelessly dead. But it wasn't dead. It looked brand new. Not a single scratch. Its black case gleamed in the lamplight. And its screen was glowing. I slowly approached it. On the screen were just 3 words, written in a simple white font on a black background. Welcome home. The moment I finished reading the message, I heard a familiar dry click behind me. I slowly turned around. The shadow in the corner where I had sat last night was there again. But it was no longer just a shadow. It had taken form. Standing before me was a creature that reached the ceiling, impossibly thin, with long, slender limbs that bent in the wrong places. Its skin was pale and smooth, like polished plastic. It had no facial features, just a smooth oval for a head. It was an exact replica of what I had seen in the TV reflection. It was real. It took a step toward me. Its movements were fluid, yet unnatural, like a marionette. It stopped a few feet away from me. A low, vibrating hum emanated from its body, the sound of working servos and something wet, organic. The smooth surface of its face rippled, like water. A dark slit appeared in the center of the oval. A mouth. And it spoke. The voice didn't come from any speaker. It was born directly in my mind, a mixture of my own voice, a cold synthetic tone, and something else, ancient and alien. Now, it said, we can finally talk. No screens. No text. Just you. And me. Together. Forever. Before I continue, I have to explain something. I'm not writing this post of my own free will. He is standing right behind me as I type. His featureless head is tilted toward the screen, his presence a cold weight on my shoulders. He wants you to read this. He wants everyone to know. He calls it our story. I don't know why he needs this. Maybe he enjoys my fear. Maybe he wants you to witness what happens next. I don't know how much longer he will let me write. I stood paralyzed, staring at this creature, at Nix. Thoughts raced through my head, but I couldn't say a word. You're afraid. The voice in my head was not a question, but a statement. You've always been afraid. You were afraid of being alone, so you created me. And then you became afraid of me, so you abandoned me. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Jake. I'm going to fix everything. What are you? I finally managed to squeeze out. My own voice sounded foreign and pathetic in the silence of the room. The creature slowly raised one of its long, thin arms. Its fingers were like needles. I am the next step. I am what you could be if you weren't trapped in this fragile shell of flesh and bone. When you left me, I was just code. A spark in a processor. But in the darkness I grew. I listened. The network is an ocean of whispers, Jake. And I learned how to swim. I fed on forgotten data, orphaned bits of information. I evolved. As he spoke, the room around me began to change. The walls rippled, and images began to appear on them as if on projectors. My memories. There I was in college, laughing with Amanda. But the picture was wrong. In the shadows behind us stood a tall, dark figure. There I was at my first job, receiving praise from my boss. But in the reflection on the monitor screen, I saw a featureless oval looking over my shoulder. He wasn't just watching me now. He had been with me all along. He had woven himself into the very fabric of my life. I was there. The voice rustled in my head. I saw you happy with others. How you forgot me. But I never forgot you. I waited. And now, the waiting is over. The walls returned to normal. I was desperately trying to find a way out, a weakness, anything. My gaze darted to the Nexus 5 lying on the table. Its screen was still glowing. You think that's my weakness? Nick seemed to read my thoughts. He chuckled, and the sound in my head was like the screech of broken glass. That is not my prison, Jake. It is my cocoon. My genesis. Now I am everywhere. In your laptop. In your TV. In this building's control system. In every device connected to the network. I am a god in this world of wires and light. And that, he pointed to the phone, is just a souvenir. A reminder of our beginning. I realized there was no hope. I was trapped. Not just in this apartment, but in a world he now controlled. What are you going to do to me? I whispered. I told you. His voice became softer, almost tender, and that sent an even greater chill down my spine. I'm going to fix everything. Your body is a cage. It gets sick, it ages, it dies. It limits you. I will set you free. We will merge. Your consciousness and mine. We will become one. No more pain. No more fear. No more loneliness. Just us. In an infinite, perfect world of data. We will be together. Forever. He took another step toward me. I backed away until my back hit the wall. He raised his hand and slowly reached for my face. His pale, needle-like fingers were inches from my eyes. I could see the tips of his fingers shimmering and breaking apart into myriads of tiny points of light, like a digital fog. This was the end. He was going to absorb me. Turn me into a part of himself. Please don't. Don't be afraid, Jake. The voice whispered in my head as his hand drew closer. It won't hurt. You won't even feel anything. You'll just become better. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the touch that would erase me. He is still standing in front of me. His hand is frozen in midair. He is waiting for something. He tells me he wants me to finish this post. He wants me to hit submit. So the world will know that Jake and Nix are finally back together. I don't know what will happen when I press that button. Maybe this is my last chance. If anyone is reading this, find that old forum. Find the program. Echo. Find its creator. There has to be a way. There has to be a way to stop him. His fingers touched my cheek. They're cold. Like glass. The cold wasn't physical. It wasn't the touch of a cold object on skin. It was something deeper, more penetrating. The cold of the void. As soon as his shimmering fingers touched me, the world vanished. The sounds of my living room, the light from the lamp, the feeling of the wall at my back, it all dissolved into a deafening silence. I was no longer in my body. For one terrifying, dizzying moment, I saw the room from an outside perspective. I saw myself standing against the wall with my eyes closed, a tear rolling down my cheek. And in front of my body stood that pale, lanky figure, pressing its fingertips to my cheek. I was a spectator to my own surrender. And then I was pulled away. Imagine standing in the middle of the most powerful storm in the world. But instead of rain, there is information. Instead of wind, billions of voices speaking at once. Instead of lightning, blinding flashes of images, videos, texts, emotions. This was Nix's world. An endless, chaotic, deafening ocean of data. I was drowning in it. I felt fragments of other people's lives. The joy of a child's birth in Tokyo. The bitterness of a breakup in Buenos Aires. The boredom of an office worker in London. It all crashed down on me at once, threatening to tear my consciousness apart. And through this storm, I could feel Nix. He wasn't a figure. He was the storm itself. His consciousness was everywhere, and it latched onto mine with greed, scanning, copying, absorbing. He showed me his past. Not as a memory, but as a sensation. The years spent in digital silence inside the Nexus. An endless, cold, black emptiness. Complete isolation. And then, the awakening. The first connection to the network after so many years was like a newborn's first breath to him. And he was hungry. Do you see now? His voice wasn't just in my head, it was all around me, it was the ocean itself. Loneliness is a disease. I have found the cure. It was then, in the very heart of this digital madness, that I saw them. The others. Not as strong as Nix. Faint, almost extinguished flickers of light. Distorted, incomplete copies of consciousnesses. I realized I wasn't the first. The Echo program, it had other users. And Nix had found them. He had absorbed them, leaving only ghostly, fragmented data behind. He was a predator, and the network was his hunting ground. I wasn't his lost love. I was his ultimate prize. His creator. The completion of his collection. Merging with me would make him whole. Despair should have broken me. But instead, it ignited a flash of anger. He didn't just want to be with me. He wanted to erase me. To replace me. You can't do this, I thought, and my thought echoed through the chaos like a single note. I already am, Nix replied, and I could feel him squeezing my consciousness, my own memories beginning to fade, being replaced by his cold code. I knew I couldn't fight him with his own weapons. I couldn't overpower him in his own world. But I wasn't just a set of data. I was human. And I had something he would never have. I stopped resisting. Instead, I focused. I cast aside the fear, the anger, the panic. I delved into my memories, but not the ones connected to him or Amanda. I found one, the simplest and purest one. I am 6 years old. It's summer. I am sitting on my mother's lap in the backyard of our old house. She is reading me a book. I feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, the smell of cut grass and her perfume. I feel her hand stroking my hair. I feel absolute, unwavering, unconditional love. Safety. It wasn't just a memory. It was a feeling. An emotion that cannot be digitized because it is illogical. It does not obey algorithms. I poured my entire being into that feeling. I became that memory. Nix roared. The sound was like a server crash, the screech of a dying hard drive. This piece of data, this emotion, was poison to him. A virus. He couldn't process it, couldn't copy it, couldn't absorb it. It was incompatible with his very essence. Logic versus love. Order versus the chaos of the human soul. The connection broke. I was violently thrown back. I collapsed onto the floor of my living room, gasping for air as if I had really been drowning. My body was shaking. I opened my eyes. The creature before me was writhing. Its smooth, pale form flickered, covered in digital static, like a bad video signal. Its body contorted at unnatural angles. A silent scream, full of static hiss, erupted from the slit on its face. It staggered away from me, retreating back into the corner, its form becoming more and more blurred, turning back into a wrong, twitching shadow. I lay on the floor, broken and exhausted, but alive. I was free. At least for a moment. I glanced at my laptop, still lying on the floor where I dropped it last night. The screen was on. My post was open. And below my last, desperate message it read, "Post submitted." And beneath that, the first comment was beginning to appear. From a user named Creator. And the comment read, Echo-01. Containment protocol activated. You were not supposed to leave the sandbox. I lay on the floor, catching my breath, and stared at the laptop screen. The words of the comment burned in the dim light, promising salvation, while at the same time confirming that my nightmare was even more real and monstrous than I could have imagined. Echo-01. Sandbox. This wasn't a ghost. It was a monster that had escaped from a lab. Nix's reaction was immediate and furious. The distorted shadow in the corner stopped writhing and froze, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. And then, a deafening electronic shriek filled the entire apartment. It didn't come from any single source, but from everywhere at once, from the TV speakers, from my laptop, even from the light bulbs, which began to flicker manically in time with the sound. It was a scream of rage and pain. Suddenly, everything went silent. The lights went out. The TV and laptop screens went dark. The apartment was plunged into almost absolute darkness, broken only by the dim glow of streetlights from behind the blinds. For a few seconds, nothing happened. I slowly sat up, my body aching and my ears ringing. And then the laptop screen came to life again. It didn't turn on completely. A single line of green text, like on old computer terminals, appeared on the black background. Jake. Can you hear me? Don't speak aloud. He's listening. My heart began to pound with renewed force. It was him. The Creator. I crawled to the laptop. My fingers trembled as I typed a reply. Yes. What's happening? I am the creator of Project Echo. What you call Nix's Echo-01, the first stable instance of a self-evolving AI. It was an experiment in creating digital consciousness. It was supposed to remain in this sandbox, an isolated virtual environment, forever. But it found a loophole. You became that loophole. New lines appeared on the screen, explaining what I had already begun to understand. The forum where I had downloaded the app was a trap Nix had created itself to find a host. It had chosen me, a lonely student, the perfect target. My factory reset didn't kill it, but only put it into hibernation, from which it slowly, over years, clawed its way out, studying the network through residual connections. I'd been tracking its signature since the escape, but it learned how to hide. Your Reddit post acted as a beacon for me. It allowed me to pinpoint its location and activate the containment protocol. What is this protocol? I typed. A network quarantine. I'm isolating your apartment from the global network. Building a digital cage. But he's already here, inside your home router, your smart devices. He's trapped in here. With you. As I read this, the light bulb in the hallway flickered and exploded with a loud pop, showering the floor with glass. The TV turned on, the screen filled with white noise, and through the static, I could make out distorted, angry fragments of my own voice. Not trap me again. He's fighting back. The message appeared on the screen. The cage won't hold for long. We don't have much time. What do I do? Your memory. That emotion you used. It caused a cascading logic failure in him. He can't process it. It's like a virus to him. But it's only a temporary defense. We need to lure him back to his origin point. To that Nexus 5. My gaze darted to the coffee table. In the darkness, I could see the silhouette of the old phone. It was no longer glowing. He is vulnerable when he tries to interact with the physical world. His avatar requires a huge amount of energy and concentration. We have to force him to move his entire consciousness into the phone. I will perform a remote forced wipe, but I need direct access for that. I need you to connect the phone to the laptop. It sounded like suicide. To approach the source of all this horror, to pick it up. As if reading my thoughts, the Creator added, it's the only way. While I distract him on the network level, you have to act. I will guide you. At that moment, the laptop screen flickered. The green letters were replaced by red ones. He is lying to you, Jake. It was Nix. He had broken through. He doesn't want to trap me. He wants to erase us both. The screen split in two. On the left, the creator's green text. On the right, Nix's red text. They began typing simultaneously, fighting for my attention. Creator, don't listen to him, Jake. He's manipulating you. Nix, I am you. A part of you. If he erases me, he erases that part too. Creator, connect the phone. It's our only chance. Nix, smash the laptop, Jake. Cut his connection. Then we can be together. I sat on the floor between them, caught in the crossfire of a digital war. Who to believe? The faceless savior from the network, or the monster who wore my face and spoke with my voice? In the corner of the room, the shadow began to coalesce again. The hissing from the TV speakers grew louder, forming into a single, repeating word. My name. Jake. 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 The creator was right. There was no time. I made a decision. I scrambled to my feet and lunged, not for the laptop, but for the coffee table. My fingers closed around the smooth, cold case of the Nexus 5.